Hello and welcome to Dish Shelved with Adam White. I'm going to switch up the format a little bit this week, and I may do so in the future too. I'm going to do a mini review of a book that I've read. Then I'm going to update on my World's Finest project, some Superman that I read, and then I'm going to have a mini book haul at the end. So that's kind of what's coming up today. I thought I'd just switch it up and see if that brought any interest. But the book I read was The Savage Detectives by Roberto Bolaño. And it was translated by Natasha Wimmer, originally written in Spanish. I got this novel a long time ago and had just never got around to it, and saw the author's name come up on something the other day, and I thought, I think I've got something by him. And so I found it, which was shocking considering how long ago I got it, and it was still where I thought it was. Usually that doesn't happen, uh, but I thought, well, I'll give that a try. I wasn't really sure what it was about, but uh, it doesn't have like a through plot per se. It's bookended by two sections narrated by Juan Garcia Madero, I believe. You'll have to forgive me on the names here. And it's told in a diary format, and it's about him being around these two characters, Ulysses Lima and Arturo Bolano. And the story is essentially about those two guys, Ulysses and Arturo. But you get the bookended parts uh, that are like a diary that are told first person from Garcia Madero, and you get to know some other characters that uh, that they have in a little poetry group, and just kind of their day to day kind of stuff. I'll be honest, it kind of reminded me of Love and Rockets, kind of following different characters and their stories. Uh, that's kind of what it reminded me of. But it it was definitely a different format. And like I said, the bookended parts are narrated and tell kind of one kind of story about Garcia Madero's interactions with these two guys and everything that happens with them. And I can't say too much because, I mean, like I said, there's not so much as an overarching plot to it, but they're searching for a poet who they can only find one known poem by, who had lived, 50 years before they did. And it's their search for her and or more of her poems or work, any kind of writing she did. And that's kind of the main thing that goes on during those parts. Now, the whole middle part of the book, which is the majority of the book, is told in a very interesting manner. Uh, it's told first person by multiple different people, like their interviews. And it's just like the person's answer to the interviewer. And what it is you're finding out about Ulysses and Arturo, but you're finding out through the people that knew them and encountered them. So I mean, you might have somebody that was pretty good friends with them, like Maria, who was one of the part of their group. You also meet her in the earlier dialogue section. But the real interesting thing is that you do get repeat characters uh, telling you about them and telling a continuing story, but it some of it jumps around in time a little bit, but you get told like the 70s through the 90s, and you just kind of find out haphazardly what went on with Ulysses and Arturo in their lives. And each person that tells it has a distinctive voice. It's a really challenging thing to do, to write a book in that manner with so many first person perspectives and make it be different. But Bolaño did that tremendously in this, and he just really did a fantastic job of making each person sound unique. And so you got the story of their lives along with what happens with Ulysses and Arturo. So sometimes you don't even see how the stories are connecting, but then all of a sudden something will happen and I'll be like, oh, okay, that's how it's connected. So it's really well written book. Uh, and again, like I said, very challenging to do it that way, but it was a really good book. And I'm looking forward already to reading more by him. There's another book. I downloaded it on my Kindle. I can't remember now what it was called, but it has some of the characters in this in it too. And then he's got several other novels. So I'm looking, because after this one, I guess it did well enough that they translated more of his work into English. And I'm really glad they did, because I really enjoyed this book, The Savage Detectives. And but it's just, again, it's kind of a slices of lives through various people, and you get to know and follow the stories of other characters, and you're just as interested in them as you are in Ulysses and Arturo. And uh, it just, like I said, there's no single through plot to it. You just follow the different stories of these people and get to know these people. And it's really a really good book. I highly recommend it. Uh, it's I'm sure it's available on Kindle too. But really good book. I'm not going to say anything more about it because I want to move on to the next subject, which is I read some more Superman. I don't have it to show you because I read it on my iPad. And What I read most recently is The Death of Superman, because I remember The Death of Superman as an event when I was in high school. And I can remember going, the nearest comic shop was over an hour away. And so I always had to con my mom or dad in to take, because this was even before I could drive, and con them into either stopping if they were going at the comic shop, or take myself and or my brother. And we were both following this religiously at the time because it was a huge deal. And of course, we knew he wouldn't stay dead, but it just, we followed it, and it was back when you had a Superman coming out each week: Adventures of Superman, Man of Steel, uh, just Superman and Action Comics. And it also crossed over into the Justice League of the time. And I can remember thinking, wow, each week, and we weren't able to get them each week, because, like I said, it was a distance to the comic shop, and so we'd read them, and it felt like such a buildup. Like, wow, this is a big deal with Doomsday, and what's he gonna look like, and when he comes out of this suit that he's encased in, and how's it going to go down with Superman? What's going to happen? And I can just remember being so excited about it each time I got a new issue. And then when Superman 75 come out, when the one he actually dies in, for the time being at least, uh, the comic shop had a strict limit of one per customer. And my mom stopped by, and she had to all but bribe this guy at the comic store so she could get two copies, one for me and one for my brother. And she finally got him to give her two. But that's what a big deal it was at the time. Was even in a smaller comic store, they were limiting their copies no matter how many they'd ordered. But basically, the story just follows Doomsday escaping from some underground bunker. You don't know where he came from or why he's there. You never do find out during this story. He just is kind of a plot device. Uh, he handles the Justice League without, any trouble at all. And Superman's like, I better look into this. And when you read it all at once, like I did this time, because I haven't read it for, 20 some years, uh, or, well, no, yeah, yeah. No, this was in 92, 92 and 93 when this came out. So, yeah, that was a long time ago, uh, almost 30 years ago. But uh, I just remember being so excited and so devastated when Superman died and how it went down, and thinking, wow, this is exciting. I had a very different experience with it this time because I read it all at once. It didn't take that long to read, because there wasn't as many issues of it as what I remembered there being. Because, like I said, we were reading the build up, and each week a new one would come out and be like, oh man, what's going to happen next? This time I just read straight through it, and it actually seemed pretty quick. It read really fast. Like I said, Doomsday's essentially there to kill Superman, and Superman finishes him off too at the same time. And then Superman's dead. And I mean, I'm not spoiling anything. Like I said, it's 30 years ago. It's changed dramatically since then. DC reboots the continuity every 6 months, if that long. So you never really know what's part of canon and what's not. But I just remember that it's a really different experience rereading it as an older adult, uh, reading it all at once, as it was when you were a kid anticipating it week to week. Uh, and so I thought that was a really interesting distinction between reading it then, one at a time, and reading it now all at once. So it was a little bit of a letdown because you you wanted more, at least as an adult reader. I wanted more, and I wanted a little bit more about Doomsday, and maybe a little bit more build up to the fight rather than just them getting into it and then both killing each other, because that's pretty much what happens. So, like I said, very different experience, but I still enjoy it. But there's nothing that can replace that enjoyment as a kid reading it. Back when comics were still for kids, at, at least at some level. Now you have to have a master's degree in continuity to to follow what in the world's going on with anything now. Uh, Although I've heard they've restarted it again, and that the new Superman is the real Superman again. And I haven't got my hands on any of that yet, but I'm going to. So anyway, Death of Superman, interesting as a historical marker in the history of comics, and but like I said, a very different experience reading it as an adult, and what you expect out of it as it was reading it as a kid. So interesting stuff, but I'm still working on the Golden Age stuff. I'll get to that in the future. Now I've got a mini book haul for you. Uh, I read a couple weeks ago Kate Wilhelm's book, The Killer Thing, and I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was just fantastic. If you've seen my review of it, if not, I recommend it because it's a good book. You don't have to watch my video, but I would recommend reading the book. It's very good. But anyway, I got two books by her. The one called Listen, Listen, which is a book of short stories. I had to get a old hardback copy of it, and then I also got one called Children of the Wind, which is 5 novellas, and I'm really looking forward to reading some of the stories out of those. Just for the interest of time, I'll move on. I got this one. It's the year's best African speculative fiction 2021, although I think the stories all actually came out in 2020, which tells you how long it takes to get it from the original language to get it into English for American audiences, which is, like I said, from the stories were from 2020. They call it 2021, yet it just came out about a week ago, and it's 2023. So it takes a while to get it, but I'm really interested in other countries' science fiction, and this is supposed to be a really good collection, and I've been waiting for it to come out, and so I'm looking forward to that. Now I heard on Steve Donahue's channel, he showed this a couple weeks ago, probably maybe more now by the time you're watching this. This 80 Years of Aquaman, which I can't seem to get the glare off of, but I thought it sounded really cool, and I wanted to read some of older Aquaman stuff. I have the first volume of the Showcase Presents Aquaman, which was the black and white reprints like Marvel's Essentials. Uh, I started reading it, but the stories were literally like of Aquaman starting a hospital for fish and things like that. And I just didn't get very far before I just had to stop and say, I'm just going to have to be in the right mood to look at this stuff. But I don't think I've ever hit that mood yet. But this looked like it was more of some later stuff that that gave a little bit better representation of some of his history. So I really was enjoying that. Now this last thing I'm really excited about, because if you saw my video on my top 5 books to die for, uh, which you can go back and watch, it's in my list. It's been months since I did it, but one of the things that I had on my list, which was kind of odd to be on a list like that, was volume 2 of the Bronze Age Batgirl omnibus, because I had the first volume and really liked it, and they only ever made a second volume, and it was apparently out of print, so I couldn't get a hold of it. Well, I got one. In Stock Trades got it back in stock. I can't sing the praises of In Stock Trades enough. They're not a sponsor or anything, but I just really think if you're interested in comics and want to buy comic collections, InStockTrades.com is the place to do it. But they got this back in stock. I just happened to look one day a couple weeks ago, and it actually listed that they had it. So I immediately ordered it. And like I said, it's volume 2, because I had volume 1. I did a video on it months and months ago now. But so I actually got one of those on my list. It was the only one I thought that I might ever come across. I definitely won't get any of the others that were on there, because they were either things that are way out of my price range, or just something that I'm not going to be able to get. So I actually got one on that list. So that was exciting. Anyway, I've taken up enough of your time this week. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I will catch you all next week.